Hello and welcome to What's in the Night Sky for week beginning Monday the 13th of July. I'm Hayley and this week I'm going to talk to you about the planet Jupiter reaching opposition, the moon paying a visit to the inner planets, and the constellation of the week, which is Draco the Dragon. I'd like to start by talking about the International Space Station, and this week presents lots of opportunities to view the ISS passing over. I'll give you one example, which occurs on Monday the 13th of July and a little after 10 past 11, and you can see that the ISS is just peeking above the horizon now at 12 minutes past 11 on the 13th of July. I'm just going to speed up time a little bit, and you can see the path that the International Space Station will take across the night sky, and the whole pass will take around 6 minutes. If you want to find out about other International Space Station passes where you are, then as always you can check NASA's Spot the Station website, and that will tell you the times of all of the ISS passes for your location. Let's move on to the planets now, and I'd like to focus on Jupiter this week. Jupiter reaches opposition on Tuesday, which is when it appears on the opposite side of the sky to the Sun and is making its closest approach to Earth. This means that Jupiter will appear slightly larger and slightly brighter than it does at other times, so this week is the perfect time to observe Jupiter and its moons. Let's go to Tuesday and zoom in on Jupiter, see what we have. Okay, so if you have a telescope that is larger than about 100 millimeters or 4 inches in diameter, then you could have a go at catching a glimpse of the Great Red Spot, which I am ringing with my mouse now. And the Great Red Spot is an enormous storm that is larger than the Earth and has been raging on Jupiter for at least 189 years, since we first observed it in 1831. Jupiter having the fastest rotation period of all the planets of about 10 hours, so Jupiter's day is about 10 hours long, which means that the Great Red Spot is regularly in view. And if you want to know exactly when it's in view so that you can plan an observation, then you can use a free computer program such as Stellarium, which is what I'm using at the moment, to help you to plan your observing session. If you are trying to observe the Great Red Spot, then you want to go for a magnification of at least 100 times. And don't be disheartened if you don't manage to see it straight away. It can be tricky to pick out, and it will depend on the equipment that you're using, and it will depend on the seeing conditions on the day as well. If you don't manage to spot it, there's still lots of things you can do in the Jupiter system. You can have a look at the north and south equatorial cloud bands, and you can have a look at the positions of Jupiter's Galilean moons. Another thing you can have a go at doing is observing a moon transit across Jupiter. So a transit occurs when a smaller body passes in front of a larger one. And to give you an example, the volcanic moon Io and its shadow are going to transit Jupiter on Thursday the 16th. So let's go to the 16th. And that will begin just before 3 a.m. So if we go to 2:50 in the morning, zoom in a little bit, and we can see that Io is getting close to the edge of the disk of Jupiter. And if I just speed up time a little bit, you can see Io transiting across the disk of the planet. You can also see Io's shadow just behind it, and because Jupiter is at opposition at the moment, the shadow and the moon appear very close together on the disk of Jupiter. When we are further away from opposition, the shadow and the moon will appear further apart. You won't be able to observe the whole of this transit because Jupiter will set before the transit is over. But if you observe near the beginning, of the transit, so around 3 a.m, then you should have a good opportunity to see Io and its shadow on the surface of Jupiter. Let's take a look at the moon now. And at the beginning of the week, the moon will be around half illuminated. Let's go back to Monday the 13th. And you can see that the moon on Monday will rise just after 1 a.m. And as the week goes on, the moon will be rising later and later until by Sunday morning, the moon won't be really rising much before the sun because we're getting very close to new moon by Sunday. If we zoom in and take a look at the phase, so you can see as we go through the week, the moon is waning towards a very thin crescent at the end of the week. On Friday the 17th, so we're on Friday the 17th at the moment, Venus will be very close to the moon. So the thin crescent moon will be very close to Venus. Here we go. And also very close to the orangey star Aldebaran in the constellation of Taurus. So here we have the head of Taurus, the bull, the angry eye of the bull, Aldebaran, which we talked about last week, and planet Venus and the thin crescent moon. And these three in a triangle will make a nice binocular target. So if you do have a pair of binoculars and you want to have a go at spotting these three, you can do so on Friday morning. And then on Sunday morning, so Friday morning you've got the moon visiting Venus, and on Sunday morning we have the moon visiting Mercury. So if we move on to Sunday, let's zoom out a little bit, and here we have the thin crescent moon. We zoom in and you can see we have the planet Mercury just peeking above the horizon, and we're on about 4:30 in the morning at the moment. If you do want to have a go at observing the crescent moon and Mercury, do make sure that you are doing so before the sun has risen, because if you accidentally look at the sun with your naked eye or with any kind of observing equipment, then you could damage your eyes, so please don't do that. You will need a nice clear horizon in the northeast to be able to see those two. Let's finish by looking at our constellation of the week for this week. So we'll go back to the darker part of the night, zoom out, and our constellation of the week is Draco, which is Latin for dragon, so Draco the dragon constellation. Here is the head and here is the tail. If we put the art on, we can see the dragon depicted in the night sky. Now, Draco, the constellation, is not particularly bright, so you might need some help to find it. So a bit of a challenge for your constellation of the week this week. If you find the Big Dipper, so the familiar asterism of the Big Dipper, which we often use to help us to find our way around the night sky, and also find the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor, and look in between the two, and you will see the tail of the dragon, and you can follow that to find the rest of the constellation. And Draco the dragon lies close to the pole star, so here's the pole star, Polaris in Ursa Minor, and that means that the constellation is a circumpolar constellation, which means it never sets for observers at northern latitudes, so you should always be able to see Draco. Interestingly, Polaris has not always been the pole star, and around 4,000 years ago it was a star in Draco in the dragon's tail called Thuban, which was the pole star. So around the time the Egyptians were building the pyramids, the pole star was actually in the constellation of Draco, and that is due to the way that the Earth wobbles on its axes. So the pole star doesn't stay the same all the time. In Greek mythology, the story goes that the dragon was a monstrous beast with 100 heads, chosen by Hera to guard the golden apples of immortality. And these apples grew in a garden beyond the river of time in the land of death. And the dragon was slain by Hercules in the 11th of his 12 labours, and that is why the constellation of Draco lies close to the constellation of Hercules in the night sky. So that brings me to the end of our night sky tour for this week, and I will be back again next week.